Welcome to the Hadith class. Today, inshallah, we'll start talking about the book itself, Sahih al-Bukhari. We already talked about the person, the scholar, Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah, Muhammad ibn Ismail. We studied briefly his biography, and now we are moving to study the book itself. First of all, what's the name of the book? Now, the famous name is Sahih al-Bukhari. But that's not the name it was known with at the time of Imam Bukhari rahimahullah. That's not the name he called it. What's the name he gave it to his book? When you write something, you name it. You write a book, you call it. Later on, people started saying it is Sahih al-Bukhari. Does anyone know the name of Sahih al-Bukhari? Yes.
I can give you part of the name.
Part of the name. What's part of the name? Al-Musnad.
Al-Mukhtasar.
Al-Mukhtasar? No. No.
Okay, he's got one word.
One word only. Yes. Jami'. Okay, good. We are filling in the spaces. Good. Jami'. We have Jami'. We have Musnad. What else? First, what's the meaning of Jami'? Collective. You remember the Jami'? It includes everything. Yes. Aqwal wa af'al. Close, not exactly. Okay, it is al-Jami' al-Sahih. Means the authentic, collective. Al-Jami' al-Sahih al-Musnad. What's the meaning of Musnad?
Proofs. It has proofs.
Yes. Arranged by the mentions the narrator, because Musnad comes from which word? Isnad. What's the Isnad? Chain of narrators. So it has the names of the narrators. That's why, by definition of Imam al-Bukhari, what you have is not his book. What you have is something else, because what you have does not include the chain of narrators. So that's not what he meant. Anyway, it is al-Jami' al-Sahih al-Musnad. Okay, these are three things. Al-Jami' collective, means collective. Sahih, authentic. Musnad, with chain of narrators. Min hadithi, of the hadith. And we already mentioned what's the meaning of hadith. Min hadithi Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa sunanihi wa ayyamih. You see how big is the title of this book? That's why no wonder scholars said it is Sahih al-Bukhari. That's easier. I will ask you in the exam, what's the name of Sahih al-Bukhari? Muhammadur Rasulullah. Okay? Al-Jami' al-Sahih al-Musnad min hadithi Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa sunanihi wa ayyamih. So how many words? Al-Jami' al-Sahih al-Musnad min hadithi Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa sunanihi wa ayyamih. 7 things we have. Okay? 7 things. First, it is Jami', it is collective. Second, it is authentic. Third, it is Musnad. It mentions the chains of narrators. Chains of narrators, authentic, collective of what? Of hadith. Hadith of the Messenger ﷺ, and his sunan and his days. Ayyamihi. Okay? That's the name of Sahih al-Bukhari. Now we know the name. I like to see from you a suitable translation for that title. Because in Arabic, that's the name. Al-Jami' al-Sahih al-Musnad min hadithi Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa sunanihi wa ayyamih. Try to work on translation, suitable translation for that title. And I'll give you dua, inshaAllah. How many ahadith exactly are mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari? What's the total number of the ahadith in Sahih al-Bukhari? 7,560. That's close. That's close. This is the total number of the hadith. 7,397 hadith. 7,397 hadith. Look at this number. What's the number? This is the number of the continuous chains, the continuous ahadith with chains. Repeated and not repeated. remember that in Sahih al-Bukhari, there are ahadith which are repeated. Okay.
They got 7,500 plus.
We'll talk about that. So 7,397. With the repeated ahadith, we have 9,082. What do we mean by repeated? It includes 1,341. These are the ahadith without isnad, mu'allaq. Remember what we mentioned about mu'allaq, hadith mu'allaq? So in total, how many ahadith we have? In total, everything, 9,082. But the ahadith itself, how many ahadith? 7,397. Okay, again. 7,397. What does that say? What's this number refer to?
The Sahih Hadith, that is with its Muslim.
With the chain of narrators, with repetition also. It is repeated. What's the number? 9,082. The total ahadith with the repeated ones, with the ones that do not have isnad, mu'allaq. How many ahadith mu'allaqa that are elevated to the Messenger ﷺ in Sahih al-Bukhari? 1,341. Okay? 1,341, these are ahadith mu'allaqa without chains or with only 2 or 3. And it is elevated to the Messenger ﷺ. Okay? Are we done with these numbers? Because I may ask you about any one of them. I may ask you in Sahih al-Bukhari we have the number 1,341. It refers to what? You have to tell me. These are the mu'allaq ahadith that are elevated to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay. 2,602. 2,602 ahadith. This is what? This is the pure ahadith without repetition. Without repetition. The unique ahadith that has no repetition, that has no same isnad, it is 2,602. This is the total number of the ahadith without repetition. Okay? What about 2,761? This is again the total number of the ahadith that are not repeated with the mu'allaqat. With the mu'allaqat. Because even the 1,341 ahadith which are mu'allaq, they include some repeated ahadith as well. So how many mu'allaqat do we have in Sahih al-Bukhari without repetition? 159. 159. Do you get the numbers? What's the relation between 159 and 1,341?
The remainder out of the 1,341 are
Including the repeated one.
Yeah, 159 ahadith mu'allaqa elevated to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam without repetition. Mu'allaq that is elevated to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam without repetition. But the 1,341, it includes elevated, it includes continuous chain, it includes also not continuous chain, mu'allaq, mawquf. Okay? Well, you need to memorize it. So these are the numbers. So now, if someone said the total number of the ahadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, 2,602, is this correct?
no,
Why?
because there are other hadith.
That's true. That's the total number of the ahadith without repetition. Without repetition. If you count the hadith, like إنما الأعمال بالنيات, okay? Maybe there is another narration, إنما الأعمال بالنية. Now this counts as one hadith without repetition. With repetition, they are two ahadith. You got it? Is it clear? Questions later. Okay. How many chapters do we have in Sahih al-Bukhari? Many. That's a good answer. How many chapters? Like we have Bad al-Wahi, the beginning of revelation. We have Kitab al-Ilm, the book of knowledge. We have chapter about Tahara, purification. We have chapter about Salah, Jihad. How many? 96. 96 chapters. I went online to double check, and I saw that the copy online of Sahih Bukhari, it has 93 chapters. And I spent like 1 hour figuring out what's the difference, what's the problem here and there. Of course, the authentic one is the one is printed, because that's, first, it's in Arabic, it is verified, it is checked many times. What I found online is this. The 8th chapter in Sahih al-Bukhari is the book of Salah. Okay? Online, number 9, they added Sutrat al-Musalli. Sutra, the cover for the one who prays. You put something in front of you so anyone could pass or cross after that. This is mentioned online, but it's not mentioned in the book. It's not mentioned in the book. So now it should be more than 96, right? Because this is something added. It's not in the book. Also, after the 10th chapter is called Kitab al-Adhan, the book of Adhan. Adhan. After that, Sifatul Salah, the description of the prayer. Again, this is added online, which is not available in the regular book. Sifatul Salah. So now we have 2 more. So it should be how much? 98. Right? Okay. We go again. Chapter 20. The virtue of the prayer. Fadlus Salah. The merit of the prayer. That's not mentioned online. So now we are down to 97. We're still 1 more. The book of Zakah comes at number 24. Online, they added Sadaqat al-Fitr. Zakat al-Fitr, it is added online, while it's not mentioned in the book. So now we are again 98. I may ask you, I will not, of course, before we move forward, I will not ask you to memorize every single chapter in the book. Okay? Because it's 96 chapters, but you need to know them. Okay? I may ask you, is this book available in Sahih Bukhari or not? Kitab al-Iman. And you need to tell me yes or no. You have to be aware of the books in Sahih Bukhari, but you don't have to memorize them all. Like, I will not ask you to list them, 96 chapters. This is very, very advanced level. Okay? But you need to know, I mean, it's Sahih al-Bukhari. You need to know the first chapter, the first few chapters. You need to know the order of the chapters in Sahih al-Bukhari, because it's different, and it will come with us in the comparison between Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. Why Imam Bukhari started with this chapter, and Imam Muslim started with that chapter. Even the beginning, the first chapter, it's different. And the last chapter is different also, between Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. The number is different. We will take all this when we compare between Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. So I need you to know at least these differences now. So you need to know few of the chapters. You need to know what are they. You don't have to memorize them all. So Sadaqat al-Fitr is available online, and it's not available in the book that we have. Then we move forward. Fadl Laylat al-Qadr, the virtue of the night of decree. This is not mentioned online, in the copy online. By the way, the copy online is very good. It's very good. So it's not mentioned. Now we are down to 97. Al-Kafala. Kafala means sponsorship. You sponsor someone. If he purchased something, you guarantee that you will, if he did not pay, you will pay on his behalf. This is Kafala. This is not available online. So now we are even, 96. Al-Khusumat, disputes in transactions. It's not available online. Now we are down 95. Al-Mukatab, the slave who made a transaction with his master to free him, and he is paying him payments. This is not mentioned online. Al-Mukatab. So now, how many books short? 2. Al-Jizya wal-Muwada'a. Al-Jizya the tax that the non-Muslims pay for the Muslims. It is not mentioned online. And the rest is identical. So now we have 3 different chapters. But in reality, they are 10 different. There is like 5 added from online, and there are 7 omitted. I may ask you about this. Now comes the question, because I don't have the copy in English. I don't have the copy of Sahih Bukhari in English, the book. Does anyone have the book in English? Not the summarized, because the summarized, it's one volume. Do you have did you check the number of volumes? Who has the book in English, the copy? Do you have it? You have it? Online, how many students have it? Bazira has it? Olivia and Bazira. What about the rest? Okay, the rest, did you go at least one time online to check Sahih al-Bukhari? The same one? The same one? Shaza. Okay. Now your job, you have a homework. This is for you. Your job is to find out how many chapters do you have online. And your job is to find how many chapters also. Those who have the book, tell me how many, because this is our job now. We need to know what are the differences, what the translators did, what the printed copy, what are the changes between the printed copy and the copy online and the Arabic original copy. Okay? So if you have the book, that's your job. If you have online, I did it for you. Now I told you. I told you what are the differences. You need to know these differences. What are the different chapters? Okay. The total number of the shuyukh of Imam al-Bukhari. How many different shuyukh are mentioned in his book? Sometimes he says, Haddathana al-Humaydi, one of his sheikh. Abdullah bin Yusuf, one of his shuyukh. Ahmad bin Hanbal, one of his shuyukh. How many different shuyukh? Now we said we have 2,602 ahadith, different ahadith, totally different. How many shuyukh for Imam al-Bukhari? 289. 289. And that's very large number for one scholar. Again, as I told you, how many total shuyukh in the life of Imam al-Bukhari? Over 1,000. 1,080 sheikh. But in Sahih al-Bukhari, how many shuyukh? 289. Why don't we have 1,000 sheikh? Why? Because again, he chose to narrate in Sahih al-Bukhari the top. From the top. Because even his shuyukh, they are levels. They are not on the same level of trustworthiness, of memorization. So we have 289 different sheikh for Imam al-Bukhari in his book. Now we are coming to an issue in Sahih al-Bukhari which scholars looked at deeply and thoroughly to find the reason, which is the repetition. Repetition. Imam al-Bukhari, as we said, he narrated 2,602 ahadith. But with repetition, this number jumped to 7,397. 97. It's almost twice, double the number. Why? Why he repeated so many ahadith? There was a reason. Every time Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah, he repeated a hadith, there is a reason. There are no 2 identical ahadith repeated. Never. You see those 2,602, they are repeated but for a reason. Whether there is a word that is different or there is a narrator that is different, there is a reason. There is a reason. That's the knowledge of Imam al-Bukhari. He was genius, rahimahullah. Because it's not only a book of hadith. It is one of the fewest books of hadith that he included the ahkam, the rulings of fiqh, without even telling you this is the ruling. By quoting the hadith here, you know that he implied so and so, but it needs understanding. So, repetition in Sahih al-Bukhari for a reason. Usually, as I said, Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, he does not repeat the hadith with the same exact narrators, with the same exact wordings, without a reason. There will be always a reason. Sometimes he mentions the same hadith twice, but he divides it. Like, this is the chain of narrators, this is the beginning of hadith. In another place, he mentions the same chain of narrators, the continuation of the same hadith he mentioned earlier. Again, for a reason. He did all of that for a reason. Few of the reasons in the isnad, to know that this narrator heard from that sheikh. If there is a doubt that this narrator did not hear from another narration, when he mentions another narration, you know that this hadith came from two different men. So it is not gharib, it is what? Aziz, for instance. Or to tell you that this man, he heard from two different shuyukh. This is in the isnad. And we will not talk a lot about the isnad because the copy you have, it does not have isnad. But I will talk about the text. Okay, and I'll give examples. Hadith of the Hawd of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We talked about it in Aqidah, right? We said that this hadith is mutawatir, means it was multiply narrated. Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah mentioned this hadith in the book of Raqa'iq, the heart softening. Raqa'iq. Why he mentioned it in the book of Raqa'iq? What's the purpose of softening the heart? Or how you soften your heart? How you do that? Tell me, I mean, if you found that your heart is hard and you wanted to soften it, what do you do? Remembrance of Allah, very good. What else?
The reward of Jannah.
Reward of Jannah, right? Or the punishment of hellfire, right? Yes, Fatima. Thinking about the Day of Judgment, exactly. That's the reason why Imam Bukhari rahimahullah mentioned the hadith of the pool of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam in that chapter. Because it softens your heart that on the Day of Judgment you will find the pool of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Wouldn't that soften your heart? Yes. However, he mentioned it in the book of Fitan, the book of trials. Why? Amna? After the trials, this is the reward of that. Yeah, close, but that's not the reason. Yes?
Not everyone would drink from it.
Not everyone would drink, right? Why not everyone? Who will not drink? Those who innovated. Those who are involved in fitan. Those who caused fitan. See, that's the reason Imam Bukhari rahimahullah mentioned it again in the book of fitan. So you know that there is an advantage of repeating the hadith. Okay, this is one example. Another example, the hadith of the miskin. The hadith of the miskin. What's the hadith of the miskin? The hadith of the miskin, the Prophet ﷺ said, لَيْسَ الْمِسْكِينَ الَّذِي تَرُدُّهُ اللُّقْمَ وَلَا اللُّقْمَتَانِ. The miskin is not the one that he is seeking for one bite of food or two bites of food. But the miskin is the one who is in need. Okay? This is the hadith. Then the Prophet ﷺ said, read if you want, and he quoted the ayah. Where did Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah mention this hadith? In the book of zakah. Why? To tell you who is the miskin, that he deserves the zakah. The Prophet ﷺ is telling you, but he mentioned the same hadith again in the book of tafsir. This hadith is repeated. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ himself gave the tafsir of the ayah. So he mentioned it again there in the book of tafsir, tafsir al-Quran. Because that was an interpretation from the Prophet ﷺ. See how Imam Bukhari rahimahullah was knowledgeable? This is an example. If you read Sahih al-Bukhari, there are lots of... Actually, you could almost say there is no hadith in that place without a reason. Another hadith. estimating the dates. Khars al-tamr, that's what we call it. Khars. Khars means you have the dates on palm trees and you estimate. The estimation, you could pay the zakah. You could pay the zakah in advance before even you grasp the dates. This is called khars al-tamr. Now look how many times Imam Bukhari rahimahullah mentioned this hadith. 3 times. Actually, I think he mentioned it 4th time. I'm not sure, but at least 3 times. I'm sure of 3 times. First time he mentioned it in the zakah. Why? To tell you about the khars, that this is what you do if you want in the dates. Now this hadith has a story. When it happened in the way to the Battle of Tabuk. They passed by a valley where there was a farm or a ranch for a lady with palm trees, and they saw the lady, and the Prophet ﷺ told her, estimate how many wasaqs you will have. And you know the measurement of the wasaq. What's the measurement of the wasaq? You forgot. Huh? How many handfuls? 3. What's the minimum amount of zakah? How many wasaq? Students of AREES. Fatima, do you remember? MashaAllah. That's... No one remembers? 4 sa'? Rensky says 5. 5 what? 5 awsuq. Each wasaq, how many handful? 4 handfuls. So if you have 4 handfuls times 5, this is 20 handfuls, then the zakah is obligatory. We said that each wasaq is 60 sa'. Each wasaq is 60 sa'. Each sa' is 4 handfuls. That will not work, honestly. I mean, I know this information, but it's for you. I mean, if it was just like a few months back and you forgot it. Anyway, the Prophet ﷺ estimated that it will have 10 awsuq. 10 awsuq is approximately 3,000 pounds. He looked at the palm trees and he told her, tell me when we come back, when you grasp this and the harvest, tell me how many wasaq it will be. And they went to the Battle of Tabuk. He told the companions it will be approximately 10 awsuq. That's what I estimate. So now, regarding the zakah, Imam Bukhari rahimahullah mentioned this hadith to remind you about the zakah of khars al-tamr. Then he mentioned it in the virtues of the Ansar. Because at the same hadith, when they went, the narrator who narrated this hadith, when they went to Tabuk and they came back, when they came back to Medina, the Prophet ﷺ said, these are the houses of the Ansar. It is the best houses. He praised the Ansar. So Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, in the chapter of the virtues of the companions, he mentioned the chapter of the virtues of the houses of the Ansar. Because it was related, it's in the same story. This is another time. The third time, he mentioned this hadith in the book of military expeditions. Because that happened in the way to Tabuk. When they went back, the Prophet ﷺ passed by again the same woman and he asked her and she told him it was 10 awsuq, the same estimation that you estimated. The Prophet ﷺ. So how many times Imam Bukhari rahimahullah repeated this hadith? 3 times. For 3 different reasons. First, it is related to the zakah. Second, in this story, the narrator, he mentioned that when in the way to Tabuk, we passed by this woman. In the way back, when we came to Medina, that's what the Prophet ﷺ said. So it was related to the virtues of Ansar. So Imam Bukhari rahimahullah mentioned it in the virtues of the Ansar. And because it was about the Battle of Tabuk, it was in the way to Tabuk, he mentioned it in the book of Maghazi, the military expeditions. So 3 times Imam Bukhari rahimahullah mentioned it for 3 different reasons. Imam Bukhari rahimahullah reached actually an advanced level. Sometimes he doesn't repeat the hadith, but he puts the hadith in a different place. Like it's not related here, for a reason. One of them is this hadith, hadith of Basmala. In the book of purification, book of Tahara, you have wudu, right? Imam Bukhari rahimahullah made a title, Bab Bismillah qabla al-wudu, saying Bismillah before wudu. And he mentioned the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ used to say Bismillah before he eats, before his food. Now the title is about what? Wudu. And the hadith is about what? Eating. Why he mentions this? He is telling you, I don't have authentic hadith according to my condition about wudu. But I have this hadith that the Prophet ﷺ used to say Bismillah before he eats. And he used to say Bismillah many times. That implies that he used to say Bismillah before wudu. Look at the wisdom of Imam Bukhari rahimahullah. That's why really you could say that there is a code, Imam Bukhari code. But who can uncode this? Scholars. They spent many years just finding out why Imam Bukhari rahimahullah mentioned this hadith here. Because we mentioned that Imam Bukhari, before every single hadith, he used to pray to Allah 2 rak'ah, perform wudu and pray to Allah 2 rak'ah, and to do istikhara as well, whether to put this hadith or not. Okay? These are few examples, and I could spend like hours.
How many years did he live? How many years did he live?
How many years? If you attended the last week, you would know. When you go back to the archives, you will know. How many years did he spend in this book? We said last time, 16 years. 16 years. And I was wrong actually when I told you who was his Sheikh that encouraged him to write the Sahih. I think I told you Ali ibn al-Madini. Yeah, it was not Ali ibn al-Madini. It was Ishaq ibn Rahawi. I made this mistake. Ishaq ibn Rahawi. Correct it. Ishaq ibn Rahawi. Okay, moving to another topic or another issue of Sahih al-Bukhari. Now, Sahih al-Bukhari, from its names, it tells you what? Does it include a hadith da'ifa or a hadith sahiha? It includes authentic ahadith or weak ahadith. Authentic, right? But we just said that there are 1300 or 1400 ahadith of what? Mu'allaq. Is the mu'allaq weak or authentic? Mu'allaq, is it weak or authentic? It's weak. That's what we studied first semester, right? It is weak. How could it be in Sahih al-Bukhari while it is weak? There is a reason why Imam Bukhari rahimahullah mentioned the hadith mu'allaqa. Because again, when you write something, there are lots of critics that they will come and they will see. What did you do? And for Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, when he said it is authentic, yet we see an isnad from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What do you mean from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Who narrated it? Where is the chain of narrators? This is weak. Again, Imam Bukhari rahimahullah had a reason to mention these mu'allaqat, these ahadith. First, we have two types of mu'allaqat in Sahih al-Bukhari. We have two types of mu'allaq in Sahih al-Bukhari. The first type, we call it what was mentioned بصيغة الجزم يرحمكم الله. بصيغة الجزم means with certainty. When the Prophet when Imam al-Bukhari says the Prophet ﷺ said so and so, or so and so narrated from so and so from the Messenger ﷺ. So he is giving you the chain with certainty that it was said from the Messenger ﷺ, though it is mu'allaq. This is the first type, and it is stronger than the second type. The second type, what was mentioned with doubt. We call it in Arabic بصيغة التمريض. بصيغة التمريض means with doubt, means it was narrated or it was mentioned, which means maybe and maybe not. This is called صيغة التمريض. So the first one is stronger because Imam Bukhari rahimahullah is implying that it is true, it was narrated. The second one, maybe. The first one, always he says, Imam Bukhari, qala, he said, from or from. But the second type, he says, it was narrated. It was heard. So he's telling you maybe and maybe not. So now I need you to know first that there are two types of mu'allaq in Sahih Bukhari. The first type and the second type. Which is stronger? Of course, the first type is stronger because he's implying that it is true, it is certain. Now, let's take a look at these mu'allaqat. First of all, whether this hadith came from a continuous chain, like what? He mentioned the hadith in the book of Tahara. In the book of Tahara, he mentioned the hadith. He mentions a different hadith, but for the same chain, in a different subject, in a different place. Let's say he heard the hadith from Al-Humaydi, from Sufyan, from Az-Zuhri, from Abu Huraira. Okay, now we have 4 people. He goes to another hadith and he mentions the last 2. Why he did that? Because already in the previous hadith he mentioned the first 2. So there is no need to repeat them. He's telling you that this hadith here is mu'allaq, but it was mawsul in another type, in another place. It was continuous. This is one reason. Again, why he mentioned al-mu'allaq? Because he already has it continuous in another place. So in reality, it's not really mu'allaq. This is one. Or, he mentioned it mu'allaq to tell you that according to me, to my condition, it's not really authentic. It is authentic in general, but not to my condition. What's the condition of Imam al-Bukhari? That everyone has to hear from his Sheikh, and it is proven. Not with the possibility, but with certainty. So maybe this hadith, it was narrated that this man, he saw this man, but it was not proven that he narrated from him. Or it is certain that he narrated from him. So he mentions to you that this hadith is, in general, it's authentic, but to me it's not authentic. So I give it to you mu'allaq. I don't give it to you as sahih, that you will ask me later why you mentioned it while it's not on your condition. Or this hadith is accepted, though it is not authentic, but it is accepted. Means scholars agreed on it. It came from, by itself, this chain is weak, by itself. But it is supported. Remember when we said Hasan li ghayrihi becomes sahih? Now, this hadith, in principle, should not be mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari. But why he mentioned it? First, it is mu'allaq, it is not authentic. Second, because it is accepted. It is endorsed by another hadith. Or, this hadith is da'if. There is no question about it. It is da'if. But scholars applied it. It is applicable. All scholars agreed. And this is one of the methods to endorse the hadith. If the entire ummah accepted that hadith, though it is weak, it becomes accepted. See, these are the reasons why Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah mentioned al-hadith al-mu'allaq. There is a reason. He doesn't just mention it for no reason. Okay? These are the reasons. Whether the chain itself here mu'allaq, but there it was continuous, or this hadith is by itself authentic, but not to his own condition. Like some hadith, it was mu'allaqa in Sahih al-Bukhari, but it's available in Sahih Muslim. Now Sahih Muslim, his condition is a little bit lower than Sahih al-Bukhari. The hadith itself is authentic or not? It is authentic, it is in Sahih Muslim. But he himself, Imam al-Bukhari, it did not meet his criteria, his condition, he mentioned it mu'allaq. Or, scholars endorsed this hadith, and he knows that it is endorsed, it is strengthened, but again, he did not mention it with continuous change, so he quoted it mu'allaq. Or this hadith is da'if, but scholars applied it. So, he mentioned it. What are these examples? First example, it was narrated from Ibn Abbas that they used Al-Fatiha as ruqya. This is one example. Look, what did he say? It was narrated from Ibn Abbas. وَرُوِيَ عَنْ ابْنِ عَبَّاسٍ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُمَا أَنَّهُمْ كَانُوا يَرْقُونَ بِفَاتِحَةِ الْكِتَابِ. Now, what is the chain of narrators here? Do you have chain of narrators from Imam Bukhari rahimahullah to Ibn Abbas? We don't have. Why he quoted it in Sahih Bukhari and he said, I will only quote authentic hadith? Because in another place, he mentioned the hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu anhu. From Ibn Abbas, what are the names of Surah Al-Fatiha? One of the names is what? Al-Ruqya. Why it was called Al-Ruqya? Because it was used as Al-Ruqya. Who used it? Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Who used it? We know the story when the companions went and there was a chief of a tribe and he was bitten by a scorpion and he was cured. Who narrated that hadith? Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma. And it is authentic in Sahih al-Bukhari. That's why he did not need here to mention the isnad. It is already authentic. It was mentioned there that Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu anhu, he recited Surah Al-Fatiha. See the reason why he did not mention the isnad? This is one example. Another example. Narrated Aisha radiyallahu anha, the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to mention or used to remember Allah at all times. Now Imam al-Bukhari mentioned this with sighat al-jazm, means with certainty. Though he did not mention an isnad, but this hadith came authentic from another book in Sahih Muslim. This hadith came. It is authentic. But it did not meet his criteria, so he did not mention the isnad. By itself, is this hadith authentic or not? Yes, but not to him. By itself it's authentic. It's in Sahih Muslim. It is in Sahih Muslim. So is it authentic or not? It is authentic. But he did not mention the isnad. This is another example. Another example. The Messenger ﷺ executed or commanded the debt to be executed before the bequest. What does that mean? قضى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بالدين قبل الوصية. Someone dies. And he has a bequest. In his will and final testament, he wrote that I want 1/3 of my money to be given in charity. When he died, he owes someone $2,000. What do we do first? Do we spend 1/3 of his will, of his money in charity, or first we give the $2,000? First we give the $2,000. Why? According to this, we pay the debt first. But this hadith by itself is weak. It's weak. However, all scholars agreed to apply it. No single scholar from the 4 Imams or others, they said, no, you apply first the bequest. You have to execute first the debt. You give the debt first. So he mentioned it. Why he mentioned it? Because it's acceptable. It's applied by all scholars. Okay? This is an example why he mentioned this hadith. So do not come and tell, oh, this hadith is weak. Yes, it is weak. That's why I mentioned it mu'allaq, but it is accepted. It's applied by all scholars. Okay? So now if someone came and said, there is a weak hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, is that true or not? No, it's not true. You have to ask him, what do you mean by weak? There is no single hadith that is weak that is rejected. Never. You may find, just like this example, but again, this is what? This is mu'allaq. If you say hadith with a chain of narrators, impossible. There is no single hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari that is weak. But after research, like I told you, now you are studying. So yes, if you say you mean mu'allaq, yes, there is, but it is accepted. It is applied by scholars. I don't know why it did not show here, but I mentioned it earlier. I think. Okay, that's it. Look here at the last paragraph. These ahadith, remember this always, are not mentioned as initial ahadith in the chapter, but they are mentioned as supporting hadith. That's another thing which is really important. What do we mean by that? Imam Bukhari rahimahullah starts his chapter like Bab Tahara. Okay, chapter Tahara. And he quotes a hadith about Tahara. Then, after he mentions like 3 and 4 ahadith, after he makes his case, then he mentions to you hadith mu'allaq. He doesn't start or initiates entire chapter and he quotes right away hadith mu'allaq. So it is, anyway, it is supporting evidence. It is not principle. It is not initial hadith. That's very important. All the hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari are this way. Okay? Do you get it so far? So first, he doesn't mention a hadith which is weak. If he mentions mu'allaq, that means it is continuous in another place. If he mentions mu'allaq, it is authentic by itself but not to his condition. It is weak but it is accepted. And anyway, he doesn't mention it at the beginning. He mentions it at the end. I'm giving you extra bonus. That's how Imam Bukhari rahimahullah quoted al-mu'allaq. Okay. Now another issue, which is the untrustworthy narrators. Now we said Sahih al-Bukhari is what? Authentic book. Can an authentic hadith have a weak narrator? Can or can't? What's the condition of the authentic hadith? Transmitted through trustworthy or untrustworthy narrators? Trustworthy. Yet they came to Sahih al-Bukhari and they found out that there are some men who are not trustworthy. How could that happen? Scholars criticized Imam Bukhari rahimahullah for narrating the maximum or the total number of men that are available in Sahih al-Bukhari, and they criticized him for that, are 80. This is out of how many people? No, not 289. 289 is the number of his shuyukh. Only his shuyukh. This means you have the total number of men in Sahih al-Bukhari. Actually, I don't know if there is a statistic about this or not, but I guarantee you thousands. There are because every hadith, it has to start with one of those 289. But after those 289, there is like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or even 7 people. What about them? Sometimes they are repeated, sometimes they are different. The total number out of all this sea of men, you have only 80. 80 that people criticized. So let's go, of course we cannot go through all of them. However, Imam Ibn Hajar, he went through every single one of them. What happened? This is what happened. First, most of those narrators are teachers for Imam Bukhari. So it is true. Most of those 80 are from the 289. That's true. However, he himself, Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, he knows his shuyukh better than others. Remember when we said which takes precedence, criticism or impugnment or validation? Which takes precedence? Impugnment, if it was described, if you know the reason. Now, Imam Bukhari rahimahullah is telling the people, you are criticizing people for things you think they are correct, but I know them better. Most of them are his shuyukh, so he knows better than others. He learned with them, he lived with them, he knew them very well. This is one thing. Okay? Most of those criticized people, they are from the 289 that he knew. So he's not narrating something that he doesn't know. He's narrating from someone he saw, he lived with. And he's confident that he knows what he's narrating. This is number one. Number two, most of these narrations that he narrated are few. Means that it's only 80 people. And what he narrated from them are very, very minimal. And the total number of the ahadith, it's coming 110. 110 out of 7,000. What's the percentage? 100 out of 7,000.
That's almost 1 point.
Almost 2%. Let's say 2%, right? 2%. Look at the accuracy of Imam Bukhari. Only 2% that is criticized. That does not mean 100% it is wrong. Okay? Number three, he didn't mention their narrations as essential narrations. Again, those narrators, again, he did not start with them. He mentions the hadith, that is principle. Then he goes as a supporting evidence and he narrates from his shuyukh, from people, yes, they may be criticized.
As though he knew that they were.
He knew, of course. Just like if he knew that the people will come with magnifying glass to check on, and that's happened. Imam Bukhari rahimahullah did not reach this degree suddenly or for nothing. Scholars kept on checking Sahih Bukhari, kept on verifying is it true or not. Okay, this is number 3. Now, what's the total number of the ahadith that are criticized? 110. Imam al-Daraqutni rahimahullah, he came, Imam Daraqutni is a great Imam. Great Imam. He wrote a book, Sunan al-Daraqutni, it's great. He came for every single hadith in Sahih Bukhari and he checked it. And he came up with 110 hadith that are criticized. Imam ibn Hajar, rahimahullah, came later on and he verified every single hadith from those 110. Of course, if I wanted to mention them, I mean, it will take years, not only months or lectures, it will take years. But again, I will not mention them. Why? Because it's all related to the isnad, to the chain of narrators. The conclusion, after discussing 110 ahadith, Imam al-Hajar rahimahullah said, all these ahadith, Imam al-Bukhari was correct. Imam al-Daraqutni had a point, but at the end of the day, Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah was correct to mention it. 110 hadith. Every single hadith was verified. All of them are mentioned in the introduction. I showed you the introduction last week, right? This 500 something book. All of them are mentioned there. Again, that was a human work. It's not divine. Yet look where it reached. Where it reached. We'll stop here, inshallah, and we will continue next session with the commentaries of Sahih Bukhari. هذا وصلى الله وسلم على محمد وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.